podcast time. It's podcast time, baby boys. And it's your host, Vinnie Haunted here. I just want to come in real quick and give this the good old fashioned, just a good old fashioned welcome to another episode of Fries with Vinnie. This episode was a ton of fun for me because I got to have a conversation with Silly Drifloon, aka Zaidy. Y'all might know her as the girlfriend of Pedro, aka the Media Nut, who I had on a few episodes back. And yeah, we had a really great conversation, and I thought it was a ton of fun for this episode. So I'm just gonna, because it was kind of a long conversation, I'm just gonna let y'all jump right into it right now. So without further ado, here's the episode. All right, starting now, anything that you say can be used against you in a court of law.
Uh-oh.
So.
I guess I better be careful then.
All right, so for a little background, so that people know, everybody, this is Silly Drifloon, aka are you okay with using your first name? Like your actual...
I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm fine.
AKA Zaidy, which is probably what I will refer to you two as, depending on the context. It's random for me who I use their internet nickname and who I just use the
real name.
Yeah. There's an episode I did a few episodes ago, or a few guest episodes ago. Blur. His original YouTube name was Blur Velocity. I've called him Blur ever since, even though he's changed his name since then. And now I know his actual name. I still think of him as Blur. Whereas like you and Pedro, I've known Pedro's name the longest, so his feels the most comfortable. Yours, I didn't know your actual name for a while, and I was a little nervous to use it because I was just
really?
Well, just I don't know. It's just like I was afraid of like mispronouncing it or anything because it's not a name I'd heard before. So,
yeah, I actually get that a lot. That a lot of people look at my name and they're like, "Wow, that's so unique. I've never heard." Like, because
it looks easy to pronounce. It looks easy to pronounce, but I'm just like, I think that now, but then I'm gonna like pronounce it like, and you're gonna be like, "What the heck?" I've never heard that.
You got it right. It's Zaidy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've heard it in videos now, so I'm a little more confident.
Yeah, a little more chill.
But anyway, welcome to Fridays with Vinnie. Happy Friday. It's not actually Friday, but we can pretend.
Well, you know what? It's close enough, so we're good. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah. Is like a Friday for you, or do you work on weekends?
It's more so that this upcoming Friday in particular, I had a prior commitment with another group to get in a meeting at around this time or a bit before this time as well. So I guess it just seemed more convenient to do it
but typically is would a Friday be the day for your weekend, or do you work a normal 9 to 5 typically?
No, I guess Fridays for now are good for me. I guess it's just either a bit before this time or a bit after this time. Like it's just this time of day in general.
The reason I ask is because like there's kind of a culture of like, every time I go to the coffee shop on like a Friday, they're like, "Oh, you got any plans for the weekend?" It's like, "No, I actually work weekends." 'Cause it's like completely changed ever since I started working for my dad, because I'm going to school right now, so it's just like, well, I kind of need my weekdays a little more free, so instead I end up working all day Saturdays, so it's no longer it completely changes your mindset about like how you approach a week, but,
well, as for the moment, I work from home, so I'm not really I don't really have commitments, I guess, that I guess you could say.
Right.
But yeah, no, like I said, I'm excited to be here. By the way, I love your Hell of a Boss shirt.
Oh, thank you. You're the third person who's recognized it outside of like 2 people at school who've been like, "Hey."
I love that show. I love that everything that Vivzy Pop has done. It's really good.
It's so well, like, I don't know, it's so well written and everything. It's just like it seems just like a edgy YouTube show when you first see it, but then it's just like I don't know. I've fallen in love with it so much. I was recommended like Has Been Hotel forever ago, and I kept putting off watching it. And finally, I watched both shows, and I am suffice it to say, I am fully hooked in the in both cartoons. Hopefully, we get a Has Been Hotel. The show comes out soon. I don't know. I know that it was originally going to be an Adult Swim show, wasn't it? Or am I misremembering this?
Mm, I don't recall. I know that a studio did pick it up, but I it was definitely not
Yeah.
uh
I don't.
Adult
Yeah, I
Swim.
don't. I know they don't have it now, but like, and then recently, I think there was some kind of like weirdness with like, and then a different studio got it. I don't know. I like that at Hell of a Boss is like completely funded by like merch and stuff.
Yeah,
It
that was really awesome because I recently was checking out Vivzi's Patreon, and I see like all of her goals being reached. Like this was
yeah.
100% a crowd-funded show, and
Mm.
honestly, it's really incredible that we as the internet can get together and
Yeah, I
make
know.
something like that happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it. I'm curious. Like, what do you think? Do you think like this is kind of be the future of like entertainment? Like, are we going to see more and more like crowd funded stuff and like independent stuff, or do you think the big industries are always going to be kind of like still taken over? Because
I
it
feel
seems
like
like
the
people are more
Mhm.
frustrated, like with Disney,
Right.
canceling Owl House's third season and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Seems like people are kind of tired of that.
I feel like big corporations are always going to see things from a marketing perspective. They're always going to see things from a what will sell the most toys and the most merch and what can make the most profit. And since they're always seeing it that way, they will never see the creative aspect of 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 the shows. They won't see the creative value in it. And so then they won't value it as much and they just toss them away like it's nothing in the end. And they've already done that. Warner Brothers Media has already done that with everything that's going on with
Yeah.
HBO Max
Oh,
and Discovery.
that sucks
Yeah,
so
I
much.
brought
Oh my
that
god.
old wound up, but yes, it's just so frustrating that they're erasing all these shows from existence and canceling left and right like they don't even matter, when they don't even realize that there's hundreds of animators and artists and writers who put their blood, sweat and tears into bringing these characters to life, into bringing these stories to life, because we as humans, we connect the most with
Mm,
the stories we tell each other. And what is animation and animated shows than just that,
right.
us trying to connect
Yeah.
and relate to each other by telling these stories to other people,
Yeah.
and getting that out there and putting your creativity out into the world. So I feel like with crowd-funded things, the people know that. It's like, this is what we want. We know that. We recognize that. We want to fund this so that you can get this idea off the ground. And I really do hope that takes off, because it's just so frustrating to see all these creative projects being silenced and erased from
Yeah.
existence because corporations can't see the value of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of like there was a clip I saw earlier today of Stan Lee talking about when he created Spider-Man, and at the time they were just like, we don't want a teenage superheroes. Teenagers are just the sidekicks. That's what they do, you know. And nowadays, every superhero is a teenager. All these
Yeah.
you see that all the time. That's like now a common trope is that teenager gets superpowers. And
Yeah.
it's so fascinating because like the industry he's like a new idea and they're like, no, we don't, that's not what we do, and then somebody is able to do it and it blows up and they're like, oh, this makes money, now we that's all we do. And I think that like, yeah, it
Yeah.
takes away a lot of the heart from like you were saying, the
Right.
creative passion behind a project. But
Yeah, and I,
anyway,
I definitely remember seeing Stan Lee. I'm sorry if this topic we're kind of like on this topic for a bit, but I definitely do remember Stan Lee mentioning that when he created Spider-Man, he was like, "Oh, you know what would be really cool if we gave this teenage boy personal problems."
yes,
And the
yes,
person
that was
was
another
like his consultant was like,
thing.
"What do you mean? No one wants to see personal problems." But it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we do, because that's how we connect. That's how we relate to the
Right.
character.
Yeah.
People don't
Yeah.
realize that.
I think at the time, I imagine that corporate person was thinking of like the reason that Superman, like that character, was so beloved is because Superman came out at a time. I believe was that one of the world wars, like World War II, that was around, or is it
Yeah,
Cold
it
War?
might have been. I don't know too much about
Anyway,
Superman,
I,
but
I I know that Superman originally like had fought Nazis a couple times. Um,
yes.
so and it was kind of like a thing of like the people felt powerless, and so to see a character that was like all powerful coming to save the day was like it was a nice thing. And so I imagine that he was just like, well, superheroes, they don't have personal problems, that's what makes them
Right.
super, you know. Whereas like Stan Lee was trying to create more of a character thing, and yeah, and it
Right.
I think that it's kind of like a psychological thing where like the culture has shifted, and I think part of the problem with the industry is that it's always going to be grandfathered in, you know. There are, you know, I'm sure like you and I are gonna grow up and see, I mean, I already see like trends on TikTok, and I'm just like, what are these kids up to? What are these? I don't get it, you know. And I'm only
Yeah.
25. How bad is it gonna be when I'm like 50, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I totally do see that. It is a difference in generation. Like, whereas one perspective is like, oh, I would love to see just someone who's invincible taking on the world. Like, but then the
Yeah,
other person's like, well, I can't relate to a character if
yeah,
nothing bad ever happens to them. You
right,
know? That just makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, but anyway, speaking of industries taking properties and making money off them, the new Mario movie trailer. I think you said you've already watched it, right?
I did. Yes.
Okay. Well, I've actually got it pulled up here. So I'm gonna watch it for the first time now.
All
And
right.
well,
Let's see your
before I
raw,
do,
unfiltered reaction. Uncut. Let's
before I
go.
do, yeah, before I do, I would just like to preface this by saying that my original reaction to the Mario movie announcement was actually live on a previous podcast episode, aptly titled "Chris Pratt is Mario," and I think my initial reaction was I thought it was a meme, some kind of joke, just like, oh, Chris Pratt's gonna be Mario, and it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But he was and he is. So I'm now going to watch this for the first time and try my best to have some sort of reaction besides
All
just
right. Let's
watching it
see
in
what happens.
silence. Okay, here we go. Oh, good. It's been approved for appropriate audiences. I was hoping it would. Okay, that's is that supposed to be Peach's castle? Doesn't look like normal does, but oh damn. That's a new design for Bowser's ship. Oh wait, that's an island. Never mind. Oh, there's the Bowser. There's the Bowser. Okay, he's walking. Oh, that's not Peach's castle. That's some penguin castle.
Yeah. They're so cute.
I know. Whoa. You know the style kind of reminds me of like how they create the characters in Fix It Felix, or not Fix It, or Wreck It Ralph, the movie.
Yes. Mario did remind me of Fix It Felix Jr. Because he's so short.
Yeah. Okay. And we got a few seconds of Luigi, classic Mario trope. Well, while I'm digesting that, what was your initial like reaction?
Oh, I was so okay. So before the trailer started, I was terrified. I was like, you already know that video game movies have a bad reputation of being abysmally bad. Like, it's a next level of how terrible they are. So when I heard that Chris Pratt was Mario and Jack Black was Bowser and Seth Rogen was Donkey Kong, I was like, what kind of meme is this? This doesn't even feel like it's serious at all. Like, it felt like they were just screwing around. Like, I was so terrified. I was like, oh my god, I just want this movie to be good, please. I don't know if it will be, but we'll see. And I had no idea what to expect, but I as the trailer started, I felt a level of excitement that I have not felt in a long time. And it was just everything looked beautiful. The Bowser's ship when the anchor came down, when the Koopas were moving, when Bowser blew his fire at the ice castle and everything was blowing up, that looked stellar. And then something clicked inside my head and I was like, this is it. This is the formula that we needed all along, that we've been missing. And that's and that's mainly the main thing that I took away from this, is that a video game movie adaptation will always be better if it's fully animated. Like, they did the
Yeah.
right choice by
Mm.
making this a fully animated adaptation and not going with the dumb live action route of Mario comes to our world and everyone's a
Right.
person. Like,
Yeah.
an actual actor. Like, I like that it's all voice work,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
you really can do a lot more with that, in that
Yeah.
sense. When I heard Jack Black speak as Bowser, I was like
Mm.
blown away because I was so worried that it was going to be like a goofy voice, like how he did for Poe in Kung Fu Panda, which, no hate to
Right.
that, like that worked for that, but I was
Yeah.
worried that, Bowser wasn't going to be taken seriously at
Mm.
any point. But this was such a nice sweet spot where you
Yeah.
could still have a goofy moment with Bowser, especially when the
Mhm.
penguins were throwing the snowballs at him. That was so
Right.
funny
Yeah.
and cute, but you still felt the threatening presence in his voice. But yeah, that's basically what
Yeah.
I feel. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, because going back to like my original thoughts on like the casting of Jack
Mhm.
Black was actually the only one I was really excited about. I thought that like
Yeah.
Charlie Day, when I saw like a clip of something animated of like they took like a Seth Rogen and Charlie clip thing they were in together, some
Mhm.
TV show or something, and they animated it as Donkey Kong. Or actually, that was two different clips. It was like one with Charlie Day as Luigi, and then somebody animated that, and then a different clip where it was
Oh,
Donkey
okay.
Kong and some other thing. And so anyway, you can probably find those if you look up like the animation thing. But anyway, I thought when I saw those, it convinced me of like, oh, this could be actually fun. Um, but like Jack Black, he is one of my favorite actors, partially
Mhm.
because like he just seems so like comfortable in his own skin, and that's
Yeah.
something that I envy. But also he's got range. Like he's played some pretty serious roles while also being a comedic actor. A great
Right,
example would
right.
be in is what was that, Nacho Libre. That was
Uh-huh.
like, even though that was a comedy, there was still a level of like, I don't know, depth to his character, you know?
Oh,
Like it
okay.
wasn't just like this is a dumb person. I felt like that film I really like um I don't know. I just really like that role that he played, and and since then, like even in School of Rock, I don't know if you've
Right.
seen that one, but like
Yes, I have
he's
seen.
got some raw moments where it's just like, this is somebody who, was like has like a ideology that he's not, he's trying to stick to, and but is just like growing out of that that age where you can be a rebel against society, to where now it's no longer like a normal trait to be like against capitalism. Now he's just a deadbeat that lives in his friend's place rent free.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. So because of that, I was looking forward to kind of him as Bowser. But like Chris Pratt, I don't think I didn't ever thought it was like a bad decision necessarily. It just felt like a very corporate decision, right?
Yeah.
Because like Chris Pratt has been in like animated stuff, like he was in the Lego Movie as the
Mhm.
main character there. And so it's not like he's unknown in like animation things. I think the only thing that like uh gave me misgivings when it came to the cast was just that, like every animated film that comes from a big studio, you don't see any voice actors being cast. Instead, you have a
Right.
bunch of like normal Hollywood actors, which makes sense. You need the names in order to sell your picture. But at the same time, it's a shame because there are so many fabulous voice actors that ought to be able to break into like Hollywood,
Right.
like animated films, instead of just sticking to anime and TV shows, but they don't get to because all these Hollywood actors, um, keep taking the spots
Taking
because
the
they got a
roles,
big
yeah.
name. Yeah, to take the roles. And yeah, it's so that's really just like, obviously it's a corporate decision. This is not a small production. This is not a small IP.
Oh yeah,
This
you
is
can
Nintendo we're
tell
talking
that a
about.
lot of money
And
and
yeah.
time went into this.
Yes, yes. But I agree with like what you're saying about like fully animated makes this movie feel really good. Mario
Yes.
in this world doesn't seem like he's like a tiny human. He seems just like, oh, he's a normal human. And here's my prediction, just based off that short trailer. I suspect he's like from like, you know, Earth, but like in Earth, everybody looks like him. Like he's not weird, Like he didn't
Right.
seem like way shorter than Luigi, maybe just slightly shorter.
Yeah,
So
just
it
slightly
seems more
shorter
like,
because
yeah,
yeah, Luigi's
like a
always been
normal
taller
level.
than Mario.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So to me, it seems like he's gonna come to this world, and he's gonna be like, he's gonna be the, I guess not straight man, but like the there's a better term for that I can't think of, but like the person that we relate to because he's from the normal version. He's
Yeah.
normal person going to this weird world, and we're experiencing this weird land through him. Um, Kind of
Yeah,
similar to
like
the setup
everything
of the
weird is
original Mario
happening to
movie.
him.
Yeah, yeah. So like, somebody, it's in comedy they call that the straight man, where it's like the person who's reacting to the crazy people the way we would, but everyone else is in on the joke or something. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
exactly.
that's my prediction, is that he's going to be in this world and discover that he has some able to like harness some weird power or something. Like that seems like the setup they're going with. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm interpolating too much. Maybe they're going to surprise me, but probably not because I've seen these kind of setups for movies before.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually, I mean, it's kind of like the reverse of the Sonic movie. Instead of
Yeah.
Sonic coming to our world, it's our world, sort of, except
Coming into the
Mario
Mushroom
shape,
Kingdom.
coming into the Mushroom Kingdom. Yeah, which makes sense because like it's weird that like Mario and Luigi are the only humans, aside from Peach, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's always
I
confusing,
have
is Peach
misgivings.
an actual human or not, because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the implications are that, well, I don't know too much about how much of the Mario lore is canon or not, but like
I
the
don't know.
implications are that um the toad species, like, I
Yeah.
am honestly
I
very
don't,
confused with how
when
the
I was
lore in Mario works, but you know what I'm talking about? There's that
when I
whole
was when I
theory
was
that
14,
Toadette
I took
turns
it
into
very
Peach.
seriously, but now I don't. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That whole
Yeah.
the crown was
The
like a thing where
crown
people were
thing,
like,
right?
well,
The super
maybe
crown.
maybe
So
she's just a
it's
toad that's wearing the crown, and it gives her some power and makes her human. But I don't I don't know
yeah, I
if
guess we'll
anybody
find
really
out if they
cares about
go
the
that
lore
route or
anymore.
not when we actually see it.
Right? Yeah.
Um, but what I was gonna say was that the definitely the casting for the movie seems fine to me now after I saw this
Yeah.
trailer,
Yeah.
because like you said, Jack Black has range and he
Yeah.
absolutely nailed his role as Bowser. I loved everything about what I saw with him specifically, and Chris Pratt doesn't sound too bad either. Like you said, you didn't necessarily liked it, but you didn't necessarily hate it. So that's
Right. Yeah.
exactly how I
It's
feel.
yeah. Especially,
Like,
well, like the
yeah,
way
go
they're
ahead.
setting up the character, it seems like Chris Pratt is the normal man, so it makes sense for like the voice to be kind of goofy, but more or less just normal man, you know.
Exactly, exactly.
And
And they didn't go with giving Mario like a stereotypical accent, which is
yeah,
fine
which
to
is
me. Like I
probably
know a
for
lot
the
of people were
best.
complaining about that, but I feel like it's fine. I know they gave him a little bit more of like a Brooklyn
Mhm.
accent, a little bit. I
Yeah,
think you could hear that in the trailer, which is fine because in some iterations of Mario, like he's
mhm.
depicted to be from there. So
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
the
see any
original
problem with that.
depiction in like the
Yeah.
original like arcade game, was that Mario and Luigi were plumbers in Brooklyn, and
Exactly.
but
So it's
yeah,
like, I think that that's fine that the way he sounds, the way Chris Pratt
right,
made him sound. And
yeah,
again, no hate to Chris Pratt because every time he promotes this movie or every time he talks about it, he keeps saying how, oh, it's been a lifelong dream of mine to play Mario in a Mario movie
right,
because I
yeah,
love Mario and I grew up with Mario.
uh-huh.
So I'm like, okay, you know what? Even though I like you, I would prefer voice actors getting the spotlight for once instead of
Right.
Hollywood
Yeah.
actors
Yeah.
constantly taking the roles. Like, I completely agree with you
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like you do feel okay, like since he's wanted this for so long, it doesn't feel like it was just shoehorned or out of nowhere. Like this seems
Sure.
like a role he was actively pursuing in that case,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, I don't this is not like a problem with the Mario movie where I'm like, I can't believe the Mario movie would do this. It's like, no, this is a problem with the
In
industry, and I'm
general.
not I'm
Yeah.
not going to expect Nintendo to come along and change the industry with one movie, you know. They're
Exactly.
not going to be the
Yeah.
ones to do that. It's going to be somebody else, you know. I don't know who. Not anybody who's in the game right now.
Yeah.
It had to be a case kind of like how DreamWorks came in, you know, with like where like Disney was the king and then DreamWorks came in with El Dorado and other films like
And
that.
really challenge them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
first company to really challenge Disney's monopoly on animated films. And
Yeah, absolutely. And Nintendo might not be changing the industry, but they will definitely be changing the way video game movies are depicted because,
yeah.
man, Sonic may have been like a really good video game movie, heck, even probably like currently the best video game movie out there with especially all the
Yeah.
records it broke at the box office. But
Right.
definitely just seeing this trailer, this feels like it's taking it to another level. Like this whole fully animated concept is
Mm,
definitely taking the video game movie idea and turning it into something else, showing truly the potential of what a video game movie could look like. Like I saw this trailer and I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, how amazing would have the Sonic movie have been, both of them, if it was fully animated like this? If it had like
right.
a different premise instead of just Sonic came to our world, ha ha ha,
Yeah.
real people and animated characters. Like that's
Yeah.
every single video game movie and it gets tiring.
Right.
Like and same
Yeah.
thing with Detective Pikachu. It's like all the Pokemon are CGI, and
Mm,
then we got the real
yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
it just seems like it
Right.
blends into the crowd. This,
Mhm.
this on the other
Yeah.
hand, is standing out in a way that's
Right. Yeah.
phenomenal.
I think 3D animation has come a long way in like popping. You know,
Yes.
originally like a lot of 3D animation was very bland, and I think you know, actually, I mean, like I was saying, DreamWorks kind of was one of the first people to really change that. Films like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon, the animation was like that was the first time I felt like 3D animation popped and like really
Yes.
just felt more lifelike by able because a lot of original 3D animation was very like this is done by computers, you know, this is all math you're seeing, you're just seeing visuals of math. So like you see the original Toy Story, it's like it works because they're plastic, but boy are they plastic, you know.
Yeah.
But as 3D animation progressed, we've seen more and more attempts at stylization, you know, and there's been a lot of successful attempts at making 3D animation feel more lifelike, in the same way that like 2D animation was always able to be, you know, very, very expressive in its animation. Because that's kind of the problem, is that when you're not doing live action, you miss out on a lot of like the expressiveness. Whereas a lot of times when you mix animation and humans, you know, or live action, I think, like you're saying, you kind of do, you know, the Pokemon stand out, but the humans feel very bland in comparison, or or in some
Yeah.
cases, the humans feel very lifelike, but then the animation is just like, what's going on here, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
I completely agree with you there. And one of the best examples to point out something like that is looking at like the live action Lion King compared to the animated version.
oh God,
And definitely a scene that people point out is that scene where Simba is running away from the stampede. And in
yeah,
the animated version, you see the terror in his
hmm,
eyes. It zooms in on
right,
his face. He makes this
yeah,
expression like, what is happening? How could this
yeah,
happen?
yeah,
And he starts
hmm,
running. But in the live action version, he's just standing there,
yeah, yeah,
expressionless.
right,
And that's what you miss out on if you're trying to go for realism too much
yeah,
so
yeah.
that you lose the personality of your movie,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I think like in cases of like, because we've had other Disney live action adaptations. You know, we had Aladdin, we've had Little Mermaid recently, and most of those, like with humans, it's a little bit different. You know, with people live action stuff, you know, it kind of works because humans are expressive. You know, we recognize emotion in humans. We don't recognize emotion in animals, like, you know, in the normal world, unless they're like
Yeah.
animated. Um, Whereas, like, but still, with a lot of those films, they did feel very corporate because of just how toned down everything felt,
Yeah.
I think Aladdin, they did a good job because it felt like a Bollywood film. Like that was a good choice.
It
But at
did,
the
yeah.
same time, like you missed out on a lot of like with the songs, the Prince Ali. It's one of my favorite sequences in like animation films because of just how Robin Williams' character, the genie, was just hopping all over the place, and it was so well done, and you don't get that in the live action version. It's very
Yeah.
still. So I'm curious, when is the when is the Little Mermaid movie coming out? Live action. That's 2023. Okay, yeah.
That's
So we've
next year,
only
I believe,
we've only
yeah.
seen like a minute and a half trailer. Okay, because I'm just kind of curious because the trailer did seem very dark, and I don't. I just like underwater is just like there was hardly any light versus like
Yeah.
the animation where you kind of see more colors going on. So I'm curious if maybe they're going for she's underwater, she doesn't like it, and so the tone is kind of establishing that, whereas like maybe when she's up in the ground, it's going to be like the world is full of magic. So
Right.
because
And
that's kind of the point, is that she wants to be in a different world. So
yeah.
maybe that's an artistic choice, or maybe I'm right, and maybe it's a corporate decision, and they're just trying to make more money. But
Kind of like how every single DC movie gets darker and darker to the point where you can't see
right,
anything on the screen anymore. They're trying too hard to be dark and edgy and realistic. And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
again, that just takes the personality out of things. Like, it's okay to
right,
be fun and colorful and have expressions, like it's it's the thing that gives your movie heart at the end of the day.
yeah,
And definitely with the Little Mermaid live action, I feel like I'm going to be watching it solely for Halle Bailey's amazing singing performance. Like, her
yeah,
voice is astounding, like phenomenal. You can definitely tell that she was definitely picked for the role for her voice talent, and solely that.
yeah, yeah.
And what else was gonna say? What I was gonna say was that Lin Manuel Miranda is apparently also working on some of the songs, and
Mm.
that's very
Oh,
exciting because
yeah,
every time he works on a song, it's gonna be good. Like, this
right,
is a man who understands music theory and knows how to construct a song, and
yeah.
definitely a catchy
Who?
one that's gonna be in your head forever.
Yeah. Who
So
wrote like the
definitely for the
songs for?
for the voice work and performances, the song performances, I definitely will
Yeah,
be watching it for that. Whether or
yeah.
not the
Okay.
movie is good or not, I guess I
Yeah,
don't care.
yeah. Lin Manuel Miranda. Did he have anything to do with like the Encanto soundtrack, or
Yes, so
that
he
was
did
okay?
Encanto, he did Moana, and he did Hamilton. And I'm sure he's done more, but those
Okay.
are the top
Okay. Yeah,
3
he
that
wrote
I
the
know him
songs. I
for.
heard because like I love so many of the songs from Encanto.
Yes.
And but I heard like some people being like, "Oh, I expected better from Lin Manuel," and it's just like, Really? I thought the songs were
What?
great." But maybe they were just holding to a higher standard because they've seen all the other great stuff he's done.
Right.
Some people, their skill is their curse, where it's just like you expect too much from them, and if
Yeah.
they don't create But that movie is like one of my favorite like.
Honestly, yeah, same here. And I don't understand what people are talking about when they say that they hold Lin Manuel to a high standard and this was subpar, because we can't forget that We Don't Talk About Bruno was literally
It's
like
so
the
good.
top
I don't.
song for like a long while, like months
Yeah.
and months, and it
Right.
was still topping the charts.
Yeah. I
So I
mean,
don't know
it's
what
a
people are
great
talking
song.
about when they say that.
I I think these I don't know, maybe this was like because this source I heard it from was just a podcast, and they have some opinions that I'm just like, I think you're just being a little picky right now, but they
Yeah.
fully acknowledge that because that's just their approach. But anyway, I wonder if like I'm curious about like, because obviously the Sonic movie was announced back in 2014, and then the Mario movie was announced in 2018. Um, and I wonder if like that like the Sonic movie had anything to do with the Mario movie finally getting made. Because for a long time, Nintendo would say, you'd just be like, nope, nobody's touching Mario. There's no Mario movie gonna happen. And all of a sudden, they were just like, okay, we'll make a Mario movie.
Yeah, that's really
And
interesting
I
to
wonder
think
if it's
about. I
like
think they were just scared to touch Mario in a movie setting ever since their first attempt. Because,
yeah,
that
it wasn't
first
great.
Mario Bros. Movie was probably the reason why people felt like video game movies could never be good. That's probably what started the video game movie curse. So there's something poetic about this new Mario movie coming out in the 30th anniversary of that other movie that they made.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like there's something poetic about that. Like they are redeeming
Yeah.
themselves with this. And that
Yeah.
feels
But also it's
nice.
kind of like it's also another example of like Nintendo like just kind of following Sonic's Sonic's lead. They're just like, oh, Sonic did something else cool. Let's go try that. So maybe it's all of a sudden it's gonna switch around and there's gonna be a ton of Mario movies, which everyone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, these are all masterpieces, and Sonic will have a bunch, and it's like, oh, this time Sonic has a sword in the movie.
Yeah, and
But,
it's really a shame that it's like Sonic and the Sonic team and Sega in general, they try really
right.
hard to be trendsetters. They don't want to
Yeah.
follow the crowd. They want to do things different. They want to stand out. Even if it sucks, like they're at least trying
Right.
to be
Yeah.
different. I appreciate them for that. I respect them for that tremendously. I do. And it's like I feel like Nintendo like swoops in like a little bit after them and they do something
Yeah.
that kind of tops them in that sense. And so
Right.
then all the attention goes back to Mario, like, look at them,
Yeah.
they're doing
Right.
great. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
once again, Mario's better than Sonic, but they don't
I
realize that it's like, oh, but
yeah.
Sega's the one trying to pave the way on their own. They're the one
Mhm.
trying to be the
Yeah.
trailblazers in that sense.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know. I
I
feel like
think it's
people
just a
should
different
respect Sega a bit
yeah,
more for at
right.
least
And I
trying.
I think it's kind of a different approach to like where you innovate, right? Because like
Yeah.
Nintendo does a ton of innovation with like their consoles, but
Oh yeah,
often it
absolutely.
seems like they play it more safe with their games. you know
Yes,
so
absolutely.
you'll have like this crazy new technology, like, oh, the Wii, oh my gosh, motion controls, who thought of that? And then, and they'll do, and sometimes it doesn't work well. The Wii U was a pretty big flop. The
Yeah.
Virtual Boy, we don't talk about Virtual Boy.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that.
But but like then when something does take off, it's like the Switch, and it's the biggest thing ever. And but then when
Yeah.
it comes to so many of the games, like their best games, like when you think about like um Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild, how many subpar Zelda games and Mario games came before those ones? Like we had 4 different new Super Mario Brothers that used the same exact format before they
Yes.
finally were just like, well, let's try something different then, I guess. I don't know. And then they create the best game ever. And same thing with Breath of the Wild. How many like normal Zelda games did we create before finally we get like this open world thing, which was so obvious? They did it in the first game and it was great, and then finally we see it again 35 years later.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like they're just kind of like you know Sega wants to be more experimental with their games, probably because their
Yes.
consoles didn't work out so well. Whereas like Nintendo's very experimental with their consoles, often to the point of fault. But then when it comes to their games, they tend to like try to follow like the trends a little bit more than maybe they
Right, I
should. I don't
completely
know.
agree with you on that. Like they do not want to stray away from the typical Mario formula. And I'm so glad that you brought up the new Super Mario Bros series, because that is the number one thing I point to when I say that Nintendo wants to play it safe with their games, cuz
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
always
yeah.
saying that. Like we got new Super Mario Bros on the DS, and then we got new Super Mario Bros Wii, then we got new Super Mario Bros U, new Super Luigi
Yeah.
Bros U, I think it was.
Hmm.
New Super Mario Bros
Yeah.
U Deluxe.
Right.
And it just
And how
keeps
many
going.
they always had like some power up they were advertising, like this one you do is this, but compare Mario Brothers 1 and then 3, which was like, technically you had 2, but we don't talk about 2 because 2 wasn't actually 2. It was some other game with Mario's skin swap. But anyway,
Yeah,
you
I
go from
remember
1 to
that, yeah.
3. The Tanuki Tale added so many elements to the gameplay. It's incredible. It was like a completely different game, tuned up so much. You go from that and you jump to Mario World, and it's just like, well, now you have the cape, you have Yoshi, you have all this new stuff. It's and all these new elements and how you can control Mario. It opened up so many mechanics in the game. It was incredible. And okay,
Exactly.
so then we go. Then you compare, say, New Super Mario Brothers Well, now New Super Mario Bros. 2, instead of this tail, he has that tail, which is the exact same thing. Oh, now he has this tail, which does the exact same thing. Oh, now Yoshi is a baby and can go balloon, which is kind of similar to the helicopter
I
cap that we
remember
just
that.
had.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
it's innovation, but it's not doing anything. It's like you're just
Yeah.
making a marketing tactic,
It
you
is,
know?
and it started to feel more like gimmicks. Exactly. I feel
Right.
the
Yeah.
exact same way. Like the coin block head for New Super Mario Bros. 2 or the propeller hat for New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It's like, here, play the exact same game,
Right.
but the gimmick this time is place gimmick here. And it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like we were getting anything new or fresh. And it's like that's their like I guess where they're
Yeah.
faulted
I
at.
I
Hmm.
feel like every 5 to 10 years we get some cool innovation from Nintendo, you know? It's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, you go back to like the GameCube era, we had 3 different Mario parties which were essentially the same game, but then you had like Luigi's Mansion, which was like sounds ridiculous, you know? It sounds like such a ridiculous idea, but it works so well, you know? Same thing when you go to the Wii. It's like that's a lot of innovation going on, but a lot of the games were pretty like, I mean, yeah, bowling, that makes sense to have on a motion control game, pretend that you're bowling or fishing or stuff like that. But then you had like Super Mario Galaxy, which while not my favorite Mario game, I will say I think it's actually a really good game if you take out the motion controls. So now that it's available on Switch, I think it's a pretty good game now.
Yeah. Oh, I love
But
Mario Galaxy. It's still one of my
I know.
favorites. I didn't care too much for the motion controls, but what I loved about it was just the atmosphere. You see, a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize this, but the stage is a character. I say that a lot. Like, you have to think of like your settings, your background, like where you're placing your characters as its own entity. And it's like that the way outer space was portrayed in Mario Galaxy, the first one, and I specify the first one because in Mario Galaxy 2, I hated that it felt like you were just in the sky 90% of the time. Like it didn't really feel like you were in outer space
Right.
for a
Yeah.
lot of the game, which was really
Mhm.
disappointing. But that's a whole rant in and of itself. I'm not going to get
Right.
into that today.
Well, that reminds me of like why I still love Skyward Sword. There's a lot of
Right.
problems with Skyward Sword. About 50% of people that play that game are going to hate the motion controls. The other
Right.
50% are going to be able to get them to work. But the reason I love that game so much is because the environment and the characters feel very expressive. It
Yes.
feels like a whole world, And Zelda has always been pretty good about that, right? Like
Yes, they have been.
even like the games that are like pretty generic, like the ones for mobile, are always like I always feel like, man, this is kind of a cool world though, like Link's Awakening. I love the remake of that on the Switch, you know. I love the style of that game just because the world seems so expressive, which is what was so great about the original GameCube version, was because this was a Zelda game that felt like it was in a whole different world. That's what makes Breath of the Wild so cool, is that the world is so much fun to explore. So even if you're not really given the best mechanics for doing that exploration, many times, when it comes to Zelda, they always at least make it feel like you got a cool world to explore.
Exactly, exactly. And that's exactly why I felt like Mario Galaxy was something so extraordinary that they were experimenting with, because, Mario was in this crazy setting, and they were really creative with like the creatures that would eat antimatter, for instance, and like there were like these black holes and these creatures of like made of antimatter that would attack you, and that they had a lot of concepts to play around with, and that was just so interesting to me, and I really commend them for that. And it's like you said, every 5 to 7 years we get some sort of crazy innovative idea from Nintendo, but
Yeah.
then they become so samey afterwards, and then they just ride
Hmm.
on that a little bit too long, I
Right.
think. And that's
Yeah.
where I feel like they could do a bit better. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been a Nintendo fan for a long time. You know,
Yeah, me too.
probably I'm trying to think, when did I get into video games? The weird thing is I remember like seeing arcades that looked like Mario, but I think they were just based on Mario. like there were like arcade cabinets that had like, oh, you're playing a 2D platformer and you're in this castle and you're going to rescue the princess. But I don't think it was Mario. I think it was some generic version of it, but I can't like, I've never been able to find those, and I've never seen them again, which is weird because like it was that time where like a lot of like I don't know, have you been in like any arcades recently?
Recently, yeah.
Okay. So like a lot of times, like there's a place here in here in Rapid City, which is one of my favorite bars to go to. They have like a basement just full of classic games, but they've also got a couple new ones. You know, like there's like a Luigi's Mansion arcade cabinets. There's a bunch of new things like that. I think there was a
Nice.
period around the 2000s where they were like creating like arcade cabinets that were kind of similar to Mario, but like reminded me, they in hindsight they remind me very much of like old Flash games. So I'm
Mhm.
curious if maybe if that's where they originated from. I don't know, but yeah, I remember seeing that. And so when I discovered Mario when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11, it was just like it's exactly like that. And then for the like next several years, I just played Mario Flash games. You know, I never played like an actual Mario game until I was probably 14 or 15, and that was through emulation. I never had a console until I was either 18 or almost 18,
Oh,
which is
wow, really?
crazy to think about. Yeah, because um
Oh,
yeah, it was kind of a family thing where my mom didn't want me wasting time on it. So
right.
instead I wasted a lot of time on the internet.
As we all
Uh,
do, I
we all
suppose.
in hindsight, I don't know, I think that wasting time is important for kids. Like now that I have kids of my own, it's just like I'm not going to worry about whether or not they're like taking advantage of their childhood. They can take advantage of childhood by having fun. I don't need to
Yeah.
like make every second of their life be productive. That's
Yeah.
that's going to result in them being like me, like how I am now, where I've if I haven't accomplished something within the last 10 minutes, I'm like I'm a waste of a person. I
Right,
suck.
right. And that's something I feel very passionately about. You know, a lot of people hold into high regards like, oh, you have to be productive every waking moment, rise and grind. You know, you wake up at 6,
Yeah.
you do a bunch of stuff, you know, you become a productive member of society,
It's
you know,
it's
you got to do
so
things.
it's
And
so
it's like,
bad.
exactly.
So
That's not the
toxic.
right mentality to have because number one, life's short. Okay. Life's
Yeah.
short. There's no time to be thinking about
Mm.
what I should be doing, what the future holds. I always have to think 5 steps ahead of myself. I think what's important is to live in the moment. And you're not wasting time if you're here on the internet, if you're here on Twitter, if you're laughing about memes about the Mario movie, or if you're drawing, or if you're just expressing yourself in some way, that's you living life. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to be productive 24/7. You don't have to be bringing something to the table. You don't have to justify your existence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I feel like
I
that's
mean,
a mentality that
yeah.
more people should understand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's very frustrating because like I see so many like especially young kids who
Mhm.
complain about like, oh, it's so hard to be a man, and it's just like really. But at the same time, it's just like your problem is that women it's not that women don't like you. It's not that the liberal agenda is making masculinity bad. The problem is that men for generations,
Yeah.
for I don't who knows how long, I don't know, at least since the 60s, have been
Right.
seen as like they're the caregiver. And so,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
as a when I became a parent, it sucked because I wanted to be with my kid. I wanted to be around this kid because I thought he was so cool. And it's like I couldn't do that as much as I wanted to because I had to go out and work a job in order to pay for food for this kid. And
Right, exactly.
I think that men are encouraged so much to just ignore their own like emotional attachment to their family, to the point where many of them just avoid it altogether. They just
Exactly.
provide the paycheck, and then they go to their garage and spend all their time in there, or they ignore their family when they're home. It's like the choice they make is to emotionally disconnect rather than put in the effort to be there the little that they can.
Yeah,
And
and I
I
completely agree with you there. Like we as a society have put like this strain on everyone involved really, but mostly towards like men in the sense that it's like you guys have to be seen as the strong pillar, the provider and this and that, but then that, like you said, that makes them emotionally detached, that makes them emotionally inept. They're not able to understand when it's time to emotionally connect with a person, when they're supposed to be spending time with family. You know, they're like, oh, I have to be working, I have to provide. But it's like, we, every single person, are the people that decide what society looks like. Like, we are the ones that decide that. We can decide to change it if we don't like it, if we understand
Mhm.
that it's not working. And this burden, this mental burden that we've placed on all of us, truly, to just be these nonstop working, well-oiled machines. Like, go out there,
Right.
work nine to
Yeah.
five, bring home the bacon, and that's it. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, that's not healthy. That's what's causing so many people to be depressed, have anxiety, have burnouts. It's just not working that way
No,
anymore.
it is.
Maybe
Yeah.
we idolized that mentality in the past, but I think it's time to let it go, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it was time to let it go a long time ago, but it's very
Yeah.
difficult because it just like things get more and more expensive, and people's solution is always, well, just you just need to work harder. You're dying kids, but I mean
Right.
that's this is part of why of like I don't want to claim that like misogyny, men have it just as hard as women do, but I do also like to point out to men like are anti-feminist that like, hey dude, your misogyny hurts men almost as much as it hurts women, because this whole system, it's like
Exactly.
obviously there's the obvious of like where women are forced to like, oh, they have to be the people who take care of the kids, they have to be the one that cook the meals. Men can go out and they can just they can grill on their their grill, come back in with some dry hamburgers and whoa, applause for the man. They take their
Right.
kids to the park for 5 minutes and everyone's just like, father of the year right there. Whereas women, if they don't spend every single minute taking care of their families, if they don't spend every single minute of their time, spare time, taking care of their house and cooking and doing all that junk, they're seen as like a
Yeah.
failure as a mother. And it's so
Exactly.
frustrating because like there should be some kind of like middle ground where
Balance?
like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can't have one person providing all the one thing the whole
Right.
time.
You can't have one person providing all the emotional connection and
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
the housework internally, and
Right.
then the other
Yeah.
person providing all the financial stability,
Right.
and just
Yeah.
have it separated that way. Like, that's not how it
Yeah.
works. At least not in this day and
It's
age, not anymore.
and going back to like our corporate conversation, it's almost like the family unit has become a corporation in and of itself, where it's
Exactly.
just like, this is your job as the employee
Yeah.
of this family. This is your job as the employee of this
Fall in
family.
line with your
Now,
role.
yeah,
Like, no, like,
exactly.
we're
Yeah.
human beings. We have a bunch of different emotional and physical needs that need to be met. And it's like the men need to be emotional and the women could also provide it. Like, it doesn't need to be divided the way we were dividing it before, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
true what you said. Like, misogyny hurts everyone involved, everyone, because it's the mentality. That mentality is the thing that's hurting everyone. And it's exactly like what we said earlier. It's like the cost of living is constantly rising, and yet the value of working is not. So
Yeah.
what happens is
Yes.
we're stuck in a rut where we're like you said, oh, just work harder, kiddos. It's that
Mm.
easy. Well, it's really not, because you're working harder. You're working for chump change. You're working for pennies, and the cost of living just keeps rising, and nothing's done about it. And everyone's just trying to figure it all out, and it's just so stressful.
Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, that like you were saying, that emotional disconnection is just the icing on the cake, where it's just like, in
Exactly.
order to survive, you disconnect yourself from others. In order to have time to do all the work you need to do, you don't spend time around people, or you don't spend time doing the things you enjoy. And yeah, it's in order to change, it's going to take a drastic like change in mindset regarding like how we approach stuff. And I think that's what like cause this is just because I've been I found a video recently talking about, I don't know if you heard about Gamergate. It was this whole freaking ordeal with
That
women in
sounds very
journalists
familiar. I
being
think the moment you start
harassed.
talking about it, I'll
Yeah.
remember.
But this guy from the YouTube channel Innuendo Studios, it's part of his like series about the alt right. And I think what scares me about the alt right is not that they have good arguments or that they're smart. What scares me about them is how effective their arguments are at roping in young boys and young men,
Right.
because they are very much are, especially in like the gaming community. They feel ostracized from society already. Add to that this whole like emotional disconnection that they're pressured to get into through society, and it's very hard for them to recognize where this comes from. And like, if I approach somebody in that situation, I don't really have a good answer. Like I can't just be like, well, just do this and all your problems are solved. But the alt right can. They can be like, hey, your problem is women, and so you should hate women, or your problem is the liberals, you should hate the liberals. And that's such an easy thing to rope them into, that
Right.
it just, and then it creates this kind of a barrier to changing society for the better.
Yeah.
It creates this
I com-
barrier
yeah.
of valuing workers more.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
completely agree with everything you're saying, because I never trust any website or source or person who says, "Oh, do you have a problem? Well, let me tell you, your problem is because of this person." Like, the moment you start pointing fingers, the moment you start passing the buck to someone else, the moment you start blaming others for problems that you feel, and instead of retrospectively looking at yourself and understanding your internalized problems and trying to fix that, work that out from the inside out, then that is a problem, because you're just trying to do the easy thing. Look for a scapegoat, look for someone else to put the blame on, instead of trying to fix it yourself or trying to be part of the solution instead. And that, like you said, it's very dangerous. I've seen too many times, like, good men, good boys going into like,
Right.
they're completely normal, and then they're completely radicalized by these people who
Right.
have all
Yeah.
these twisted mentalities, and they say, "Hey, hate this person because it's their fault." And then now they hate us for no reason. Like, again,
Yeah.
misogyny, like you said, misogyny hurts every player in the field, and it's like, it's women are not your problem. That's not,
Yeah.
we're not the reason that all of this is happening, and they don't even realize it. It's
Yeah.
really sad
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it is obviously there's like a situation where like in trying to like change society and like trying to make a more fair society, we've forgotten that there are a lot of victims that aren't minorities, and
Mhm.
because a large majority of people are in the working class. That's like, maybe 80 90% of people in America are in the working class. The other 10% have all the money, you know um
Exactly.
so like 90% of people are victims of late stage capitalism. And so in trying to like, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, ignore the minorities, we're all minorities. It's like, no, that's not the case at all.
No,
my
of
my
course not.
point is that like, the reason it's so easy for the alt-right movements, for like the conservative movement that has become so much more radical than like it originally was. So much of that is so easy for people to fall into, because they, in many ways, they have been like kind of left behind by social changes.
Right.
And of course, I'm not trying to like, I think it's important to specify that like the alt right is not motivated by like class inequality. They don't care about that. They care about power. They care
Yeah.
about making sure that them as white men don't, or mostly white men, don't end up becoming the minority. That's their motivation. But they use this class inequality as a mechanism of recruitment to get more people in their movement, which is
Right.
very difficult to get out of and very easy to get deeper in.
Right. And that's such a dangerous thing altogether, because it's like what I said earlier, this us versus them mentality is
Right.
only going to continue having us fighting each other instead of
Yeah.
actually solving, working together to solve the problems. And that is
Yeah.
just so dangerous. I've seen it so many times where people are like, oh, because so and so is a woman, or so and so is a liberal, or
Mm.
so and so is this or that.
Yeah.
They put labels on people. And the moment you start labeling people, instead of seeing them as people, you see them as just the title of who you think they are and what ideologies you think they have. That's when it becomes dangerous and just so wrong, in my opinion. Like, you
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
put the labels away from the people. Like, we're not just labels. Like, we're more than just that. Everyone is so uniquely built, and there's just so much history and story with each individual person that you know nothing about. So why just brand me, for example, as a woman and then disregard me? You don't even know anything about who I am or what I have to say. Like, you
Yeah.
just take one look at me and you go, oh, like, I'm not saying you, obviously. I'm saying, like, these people probably would, like, look at me and be like, well, I don't have any time to give to you because you're probably some liberal woman. And it's like, why are
Right.
you
Yeah.
labeling me? You don't even know me. And that's just so sad. And it's such a sad mentality to have.
Yeah, well, it's a
Mhm.
focus on the person rather than the arguments, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, many times, I mean, I grew up kind of entrenched in like conservative ideals, you know? I
Mhm.
was very like I was very much like, "Oh, feminism is dumb because women are different from men and men have to be the leaders because they're not emotional. Anger's not an emotion, so they're not emotional."
Right? That's always the
but
argument you hear, right?
but like you know, and to me what I thought was happening kind of in liberal ideology was that people were ignoring differences, and now that I'm older I can kind of see, oh, the thing isn't about there being differences. The thing is about like those differences, their relevance are, right? Because like there are people who have different perspectives on stuff, and that doesn't automatically make their opinions or their ideas invalid. That just
Right.
means that I'm gonna have a harder time understanding them because I don't I don't understand where they're coming from. And
Exactly.
I what's scary is I find myself further and further from like the people I grew up around when it comes to like the very like foundation of how we judge, like not just like it's not like shades of gray, it's like black and white things. It's
Right.
just like I'm like, well, I think that, you know, I mean, I think that the important part of the important thing when it comes to morality is just to be a good person and to treat other people, you know, with empathy. And people are just like, nope, that's not right. And it's just like, what, it's so wild to me that like people have like completely different like ideas of what like makes something a moral action.
Right.
And so because of that it becomes like difficult for me to like have discussions about stuff, because like where I draw like my, I guess, I evidence, where what I consider to be like reliable sources for validating ideas is completely different from what other people do, you know? And
Right.
that's within like people that, you know, I agree with when it comes to like left right issues, right? Because like there are, I mean, there are a great example of this is there are a lot of people, um some of them I think are like alt-right people who are just like trying to rebrand their racism, but a lot of them are
Yeah.
also legitimate like black liberals and leftists who are, you know, they're people of color, but they're just like, hey, we're different, therefore it's better if we're all separate because people can't have empathy for people that they don't understand. And I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, because yes, you're right, part of the reason that racism exists is because we see people who have like
Differently.
completely different cultures,
Yeah.
and we're just like, those people are weird, I don't understand why they're acting like this, don't have empathy for them. But
Mhm.
scientific studies have shown that the way you mitigate that is by having people around that are different. You know, we as a society,
Exactly.
we've kind of gotten to the point where we think that we can go through life without having like a meal with a black family, without having a conversation with a black person, and think that we've missed nothing. You know, because but that's not the case, you know. And so it's very difficult because like I live in a very, very white state, and like
Right.
I'm just like, how am I going to get my kids to like see people of color as humans, because
Right.
kids naturally are going, everything's normalized at that age, but at a certain age things stop being normal. If you see a kid in a wheelchair and you haven't seen, if you're like 12 and you haven't ever seen a kid in a wheelchair before, you're gonna be like, what the heck is that? you know you're just like, what, why is
Yeah.
that person in a wheelchair? This is so weird, and you're gonna get uncomfortable and you're gonna have a hard time having empathy. So
Yeah,
this
and it
whole like,
mhm.
this whole like, oh, it's not segregation, it's separation, it's just like, that's a very harmful idea. But like, part of it is that my standard of evidence comes from, a lot of it is from science, and like that's a scientific like thing I cite, where it's just like, well, here's how empathy is developed in the human brain. That's where I draw my conclusion about that.
Right. And I absolutely agree with you on that one, because the problem is that all this internalized hatred and like all these people that are blatantly racist, even though they deny it so frequently, even though it's true, there's no other way to
Right.
describe it. It's simply because they have not spent enough time interacting with these people. All these people who are homophobic, they've not sat down to truly talk to a gay or lesbian or anyone from the community. Like, they've not had the time to truly understand who they are. They've not had the time to talk to people of color, or people of other ethnic backgrounds. They've not had the time to mingle and interact and truly understand and know and learn who they are and where they're coming from. Like, they just see them as, oh, you're different from me, so therefore you're weird, and they don't give them the chance. And it's very interesting because so many conservatives go, oh, well, the colleges are brainwashing our kids, they're the liberal agenda. But it's like, no, what's actually happening is that the kids are going to college and they're interacting with all these new people from all these different walks of life that they've never interacted with before, probably up until that moment. And then they realized, hey, these people are literally just trying to live their lives, the concept of
Right.
live and let live. And it's just so harmful that a lot of these people are literally just trying to be like, well, we don't think that so and so group of people should have rights. And then when you get into a more liberal mindset, you go, well, that doesn't sound right, because you're a human being. And that should be
Right.
all the rights that you have. If you are not harming anyone with what you're doing with your life, it really shouldn't matter. Like, literally, what these people are doing does not affect you in any way, shape, or form. So why care so much, or why try to construct? It's almost as if, like, remember when you said like, oh, the misogynistic mindset is like almost a corporation, where it's like, oh,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
your role in the family. The woman has to do this thing
Mhm.
and the man has to do that thing. It's almost as if that's just the conservative mindset in general. Like, as a society, people are supposed to act like this, and it's like, if you're not acting like this, then that's weird and we need to punish you for that. And it's like, no, there's so, again, everyone is built so differently, everyone is so individually unique. There is no way to govern exactly how everyone should be behaving and acting, and they shouldn't be governed. Like,
Right.
again, if what you're doing is not hurting anyone, then let people live and let live. That's just what I think, truly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And on the note of like, college is making people more liberal, I would just like to point out to everyone that I I became a liberal without ever going to college. And the reason for that is I was introduced to new information, and that information contradicted what I believed previously. I remember when I
Exactly.
saw that, like, oh, freaking the national debt went way up under presidents like Reagan and Bush, and Obama got rid of the deficit. I was just like, those guys lied to me, because that's legitimately what I felt. And I know that like a lot of my family didn't mean to like be deceptive, but they were deceived themselves. I grown up hearing like, oh, these Democrats, they're constantly like, they're constantly increasing our national debt. And then you look at the graphs and like how much spending goes to the military, and then that goes onto our national debt. And it's just like, those guys don't care about the national debt, you
Of
know?
course they
And
don't.
And it was very like, in a way it was like scary for me at the time, because
Yeah.
it's scary having like everything that you believed, and and everything that everyone around you believes,
Yeah,
being
exactly.
realize that it's wrong, because like, at this point now, it's like I can't it seems like I can't be in like at a family dinner without like somebody saying something that's like either bigoted or like just wrong.
Yeah.
And then I'm not like an argumentative person typically, so I really don't want to like get into it, especially since I know that, like I said, these my family does not have the same standard of evidence when it comes to claims that I do. To them,
Mhm.
this is not an issue of facts. This is an issue of like morality, you know
Right.
and any facts that go against that are either not important or must be fake, because there's no way that their ideology could be wrong. So it
Right.
creates a barrier there, and that, like I said, that contributes more to like the inability to like have these conversations and like create a better society for everybody, because
Exactly.
we can't get past the fact, we can't even get past like basic reality of like what is.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like,
Mhm.
it's yeah it's, I mean, it's just like, uh I mean, there's so many aspects of like science, and like, my mom has always been anti-vaccine and
Right.
a bunch of other stuff, and it's just like, there's no way for me to be like, yeah, those studies are wrong, or no, that data is fake, because
Right.
it's no longer become an issue of evidence. It's an issue of
Yeah.
yeah, beliefs.
And it's so frustrating when people still to this day and age are denying facts and science and like scientific evidence. It just becomes the most frustrating thing ever because again, people who are more educated tend to be leaning more towards the liberal side, and that's simply because we're not out here denying what these professionals know. And it's like at the end of the day, it's like I didn't go to school for whatever these people are telling me about. Like they are the professionals who got a degree in this field, in this form of study. Why would I claim to know more than them by simply going on Google or Facebook and being like,
Right.
well, actually, the earth is flat because Flat Earth Society said so? You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes
Yeah,
no
yeah.
sense. Like, you know how many videos I've seen of like flat earthers being like, all right, today I'm going to prove that the earth is flat. And in their own study, they prove that the earth is round.
Right.
And then they're like, well, you see, this is clearly faulty data. I'll get
Yeah.
back to you on that. And they're just so flabbergasted because they don't know what to do with themselves. And it's like just denying science and facts is just so harmful because we need to, as a society, at least be on the same page with
Mm,
one thing at least,
yeah.
because it's like if we're
Yeah.
consistently disagreeing with things that have already been proven, then we're just going to go back and forth. And it's like I said earlier, like that harmful us versus them mentality, like we're just boxing people up in ideologies rather than viewing people as an individual that deserves respect. And it just becomes exhausting when people have to constantly fight and argue the same subjects over and over and over again. um it just becomes so harmful and so exhausting for the person.
Yeah. So I think it's the time that we should move on to segments.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to
Oh,
I'm
are you
going to
running out
go
of
ahead
time on the
and
podcast?
no, 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 no. We're fine. We're fine
Oh,
on
okay, okay.
time. My voice is just getting a little dry is all. But anyway, this first segment. Wait, no, only segment. Sorry, is called recommendations. It's where you get to recommend some stuff. I usually do 3 recommendations. If you can't come up with 3, um, then that is fine. But anyway, here's a segment of recommendations.
I recommend the lobster.
All right. So I meant to let you know beforehand about the segment, But I assume since you are a media savvy person, you will be able to come up with recommendations pretty easily. I think
Yeah,
Pedro
no
had like
worries.
4 of them when he did. But
So do you mean like recommendations for like shows or movies or games or just anything?
you know what? Anything. I've recommended like books on here before. I've recommended like movies, or I've even recommended like YouTube channels before. So yeah, if you wanna, recommend any of those for people
All
to check
right.
out,
No
that would be it.
worries. And it could be like anything that like I'm into right now or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, something you've been enjoying recently, something you've been going through.
All right,
Yeah.
sure thing. So definitely I know that a new segment of like the Owl House was showcased today for New York Comic Con. And if you have not seen The Owl House, it is a wonderful show. And I know that we were talking about like it was very interesting that we were talking about like all the struggles that the people of the LGBTQIA plus community go through and people of color and of different ethnic backgrounds go through. And this is a show that um definitely helps people of those backgrounds. It's something that people of those backgrounds could definitely connect with and identify with, and it's a very progressive show in that sense, and I really like it. I feel like it's really wonderful, it's really sweet, and it's got a nice mystery element, which is always fun. People always compare it to Gravity Falls, which is a
Yeah,
phenomenal show in and of itself.
it
It's
is.
got a
It's
very
great.
Yeah, it's got a very interesting premise, a very interesting world. And, it's about magic, it's about witches, it's about a witch academy. So it's fun. It's a fun show. Have you seen it, by the way, Vinny? Have you seen Owl
Yeah,
House?
yeah, I actually around the beginning of this podcast, I first started watching it around its I believe its first season had fully come out and its second season came out a few months later when I started watching it. But
Mm,
yeah, I fell in love with the show very quickly, and yeah, it's one of my favorite Disney shows right now. I think
yeah.
probably the ones because I was watching it and Amphibia side by side. Amphibia took
Yes.
me a little longer to get hooked into, and I don't really know why, but now I am a huge fan of both of those shows, and
Oh
I'm very
yeah.
sad that they are both about to be over now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, sad times for Vinny.
Yeah,
I would like
absolutely.
to add real quick, sorry, about
Yes, go for it.
Amphibia. That third season could have been 2. In fact, it should have been 3. It felt way too rushed at the end.
Yeah. It
They could
did.
have made a 5-season show about that, and I would have been a happy person. But instead, they
Honestly,
rushed through the final season,
yeah,
and
I agree
I
with
am
you
sad.
on that. I feel like with Amphibia, you definitely feel like it was rushed, but I feel like the ending was great. I feel like it wrapped up very nicely. So Amphibia is another
Oh
one that
yeah,
I recommend
yeah,
for all your listeners. If yeah,
yeah.
Amphibia and Owl House people tend to watch side by side just because they did come out at the same time, and it's really fun as well. It's a fun show. It's about a world of frogs.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound that
Yeah.
interesting, but like it is. It really picks up. It really goes crazy into the lore and the magic aspect of it all. And it's just a fantastic show. Um so yeah, Amphibia, Owl House, and I guess one more I can recommend is the Dragon Prince. Have you heard of that one, Vinny? The
I've
Dragon
heard of it.
Prince?
It's been on my watch list for a while, but the problem is a lot of shows I watch, Jana has to be okay with like seeing, and
Mhm.
she doesn't love like she's got a very she's kind of OCD, so she's sensitive to things that aren't quite perfect. And the animation style of that show is very much it has kind of a very unique style to it, and it just rubs her the wrong way. So it's one of those shows I've got to watch at a point sometime where I can like watch it on my own alone. Which
Right.
when you have 2 kids, it's not real easy to get a chance to do that. But yes, it has been a show that I've heard of and I've been wanting to watch for a while.
Right. Oh, I do recommend it. I know that the art style is a little weird to get into. Well, not so much the art style, but like the animation of it. Like it looks kind of choppy a little bit. I see what you're saying. It doesn't flow that well. But that is because they have kind of like a 3D and 2D blend with
Yeah.
their animation. And it's actually not that bad. Like you get used to it very quickly. I love the show. Again, it's made by the same team that made Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that's already promising. And it's like plot wise, it's there. Like plot wise. definitely when you watch it, by the third season, you're definitely gonna feel like, okay, I see this is all building up to something, and it's building up to something big, and it really comes together, and it's very poignant. One thing I really love about the show more than anything else is that it really touches upon a lot of the commentary that we talked about in this podcast, actually, like how society is created by us, the new generation. We're the people that decide where society goes, like definitely in this world, in the Dragon Prince, there everyone was caught up in their ways of like, no, humans have to be this in society and elves have to be that in society, and the two
Right.
worlds can't mix. But the new generation comes in and it's like, okay, maybe things don't have to be as black and white as we've always been. Maybe things don't have to be so traditional. Maybe we can break the mold, we can break the norm, and we can create a new world for ourselves if we were just to open up our minds a little bit. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it for that.
Cool. Well, do you mind if I go get a drink of water before I give my
Oh, no
recommendations?
worries. Go for it.
My third guy. Okay. All right. I'll be right back.
Oh, I have no idea if I'm supposed to keep talking. Just to entertain the audience, I guess. While Vinnie is AFK. Not really sure if I'm supposed to do that or not.
Okay, recommendations. Right. All right. So
yeah, the last thing I mentioned was the Dragon Prince. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was that all three of yours?
I believe so.
Count.
I said
okay.
Owl House, Amphibia, and Dragon Prince were my
Okay.
top three shows.
Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna start out with something a little different. This is a book I found recently. I've been listening to the audiobook of it. It's called Talking to Strangers. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. And I would just like to preface this as well with a little bit of a content warning, because it does deal with some heavy topics, some heavy situations, and essentially the whole book just kind of deals with times that people misjudge other human beings or miscommunications happened with drastic consequences. And it's it's a really interesting read. It deals with a lot of like human psychology when it comes to like how we communicate with people we know versus people we don't know, and how that has caused problems throughout the ages and in recent society. And it's a really interesting read, and it's great for like if you kind of want to delve into some of kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where like you see people as out groups, and how those differences in relationships can result in miscommunication. But yeah, like I said, not for the if you don't want to hear about some of this stuff, it can be a bit heavy. I can only do like a couple chapters at a time before I have to take a break from it. So
oh, I see. Wow, that intense, huh?
Well, there's like I'm trying to think of like a way to say that there's some kid molesting stuff going on.
Wow.
Which, as someone who has two kids, don't really want to hear about that, but also it is interesting in how some of these people were able to get away with horrible things for so long with just nobody figuring it out.
Yeah, no just repercussions.
Like, in hindsight, all the signs being there, but nobody seeing it. It is simultaneously interesting and horrific. And so yeah, it's something that has been a great read, or listen in my case, but is not for anybody who has like PTSD or any kind of like sensitivity to these topics. So anyway, moving on to a happier thing. This is a podcast it's from several different guys from like different podcasts I listen to. So Eli Bosnick from God Awful Movies, Thomas Smith, I believe he's from Opening Arguments, and Tom Curry, who's from Cognitive Dissonance. 3 different podcasts, but they started a secular parenting podcast called Dear Old Dads, where they talk about their own experience with their dads, as well as parenting their kids. and like what challenges they've been facing and like what issues they're having to try to deal with when it comes to like, how do I keep my kids safe on the internet? How do I keep them from falling into the alt-right, as well as like how do I just go about like regular parenting stuff, which for me is really interesting because like I've had to like approach parenting completely different from how I expected to when I was younger. you know there's a lot of that stuff I've just had to kind of relearn in a way, even though I never like, it's not like I learned how to be a parent before, because nobody learns how to be a parent. I just, in my brain, I thought I figured it all out.
Right.
And yeah, it turns out I hadn't. And so this is nice because most parenting podcasts are not secular. And for me, trying to approach a parenting from a more secular perspective, I don't care to hear about how do I get my kid to Jesus. It's like, no, I care more about how do I educate my kid while also keeping them like mentally healthy. How do I keep from them being under the same how do I a big one is like how to recognize mental illnesses, or because I want to be able to recognize that quickly in my kids if they have any problems. I don't want them to be like I was, where I go
Right.
through like depression and suicidal thoughts and just nobody notices because
Right.
I'm the quiet kid. I don't want that for them. I want to be able to be there for them. And it's this podcast also is like, it's not like they're giving you all the answers, but just in them, three of them, with like all of them have like kind of different perspectives. So it gives it's nice to have like a conversation or arguments about different topics, because it gets you thinking about your own beliefs about these things and how you would approach these things should you ever come across them. So yeah,
Right,
I
of
really
course.
enjoyed that podcast, and I recommend it to anybody who's, I don't know, it actually, I don't think it's necessarily exclusively for dads or parents, but obviously as a dad, it hits home with me a lot
Yeah, it
more
resonates with
than maybe
you.
another person. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Last but not least, I think I'm going to recommend an album, and I don't think I've recommended this before because I think it came out during my hiatus. But George Ezra, who is one of my favorite musical artists, released his third album, Gold Rush Kid, after like 5 years since his last album. But yeah, I really enjoy George Ezra's stuff. I don't know if you've heard of him before. He did Budapest. He's got like a really deep voice, but he's like
Um
24 or
Remind
something.
me the name just now?
It's Budapest. It's like, miles from Budapest, my hidden treasure chest, golden grand pianos, my beautiful Castillo, you. Ooh, I'd give it all.
Yeah, it sounds
Um,
familiar, but I'm
It
not
is
too
a song
familiar, yeah.
that's like his hit, which was on the radio. So most people, I heard that song before, which is how I recognized him. But yeah, he's only got a few albums, but all his albums are it's very upbeat stuff, which is not what I listen to mostly. But at the same time, it's nice to take a break sometimes from sad songs and listen to somebody who does almost exclusively upbeat, chipper songs. And all of his songs in his songs in this album are no exception. They are a lot of fun, and yeah, it's one of those albums I can put on for Silas when he's in the office. Except that my record I bought in order to have it, and I got the signed one. I think because it was in the mailbox in the heat, the whole thing is bowed. So if I put it on my record player, it jumps because it's like
Oh,
pushed down. So unfortunate about that. But fortunately, we have technology, so I can just play it on Spotify.
true. But it's cool that you have like a physical copy on vinyl. Like that's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
I love vinyl. I'm not one of those guys that's just like the sound is better. I think it's very kind of cool to hear the crackle, but at the same time, I'm just like, it's cool because it's big. Like,
Yeah, it's
it's big
aesthetic.
and you can see the art. And a lot of those albums, people put a lot of work into making the art for them. Like Tupperware Remix Party, every album they do, they hire an artist for it, and it's always something really cool. And so it's nice to have a big version of it so that you can actually kind of appreciate that, as well as
Yeah.
it's just kind of aesthetically pleasing to put a record on and play it and be like, hey, I got a record player.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
Look at
mentioning then.
me.
It's just a vibe.
It really is. Well, anyway, I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can people find you? What are you up to these days? Where can
Oh,
people
absolutely. So
trail you?
I'm
What's your
Silly
home address?
Drifloon on virtually any platform you can think of. I am on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and I'm going to start streaming on Twitch very, very soon. I'm starting up a Twitch channel. I'm getting that up and running with some of my friends, with Media Nut as well. I've been working on getting my channel up and running. I plan to stream a variety of games: Pokemon Unite, Splatoon 3, um, Fortnite, Fall Guys, a bunch of games on both my PC and my Switch. And definitely when Sonic Frontiers comes out, I'm gonna be streaming that as well. It's just gonna be a lot of fun, you know. I plan to get started at some point this month or next month. Content is coming soon. I don't have anything up yet, but it's all in the works and it's coming out very soon. So I'm excited for that.
Nice. I really loved Twitch streaming this past winter. I don't really have time for it anymore, but I'm just saying I do miss playing Fall Guys because like it was very short lived when it came to because Among Us
Yeah.
came out around the same time.
Yeah.
So it was just like very similar games.
Stole
Immediately
all of its
Among Us
thunder.
took over. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you're playing any like Fall Guys or Splatoon 3, and you're doing it to where you have a I don't know how Splatoon's online play works if you can have like friends join in, but I would
Yes,
I would
you
enjoy
can.
either of those games playing with you if I'm free at the moment. We'll have to see how it goes, but
Sure.
yeah.
On the Random Ramblings server, every time we play Splatoon 3 or Unite or any of these games, Fall Guys or etc., I do make an announcement on the events channel. So if you ever pop your head in the RRP server, you go into the events channel, you can see what games we have in mind to play. And those games that we play, I plan to stream. Not quite yet, because again, I'm not truly ready with my channel quite yet. But at some point, I do plan to stream the games we play in the server. So it'll be a lot of fun. You know, people will hop on my stream and and we'll get playing. We're gonna get those
Yeah.
games rolling very
I
soon.
remember back when I was streaming earlier this year, it was a common thing I found is like it just helped to like because it's very difficult talking for like several hours and trying to keep a stream entertaining. So a lot of
Yeah.
times I would just have a bunch of people on like a Discord call and just be having conversations with people while playing Zelda or while doing multiplayer. Or a thing I did with Blur Velocity, who was on the podcast before, was he was teaching me how to speedrun Mario 64. So did that a couple times. It's
Yeah, you gotta
actually a
do the
ton of
long
fun.
jump backflip thing.
Yes. It took me so many tries. I did like the speed run in under 50 minutes, and like
Nice.
15-20 minutes of that was just trying to backwards long jump up the stairs. But yeah, it was a ton of fun, and yeah, I hope you enjoy your time Twitch streaming, and I
Yes.
wish you luck with that. So
Thank you.
anyway,
Yeah.
as
Um.
for the
mhm.
rest, oh yeah, what are you saying? Go
Oh
ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask like if we're wrapping up.
Yeah. I think we are. Um. Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
I took the summer off of recording, not really intentionally, just because I got busy, and so my voice is out of shape. It's kind of unfortunate, but anyway. Do you have any final parting words of wisdom for the folks at home?
Final parting words of wisdom. Um. I I don't know what I could say that I haven't already said, you know, but uh I guess just, you know, keep doing you, keep sharing laughs and keep on rambling. I stole Pedro's line. Don't
It's
tell
okay.
him I stole it though. This is
He wasn't using it
copyrighted.
at the moment.
He
And
wasn't
for the
he
rest of
wasn't using it, so it falls under fair use.
you didn't trademark it.
You're right. He didn't trademark it. I'm allowed to
Uh,
steal it. There we go.
oh, anyway, friends, family, those in between, I would just like to remind you that if you are like me and you find yourself defined by your past or by the circumstances of your birth, just remember that Martin Luther King Jr. was named after a racist. Anyway.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Martin Luther was a huge anti-Semite. He wrote a whole book called "On the Jews and Their Lies." About how we burn down mosques. So, yeah, you can. If you're named after a racist, you can still go on to do great things for.
There you go.
For equity.
Two very different sides of the Martin Luther coin.
Oh, all right, friends. As always, I love you. Love yourselves. And I'll see you next time on another episode of Fridays with Vinnie.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye, Vinnie. This was fun. Bye.
Fridays with Vinnie is a production of Vinnie, written and produced by Vinnie, starring Vinnie. Special thanks to Vinnie. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Vinnie is not responsible for the views and opinions expressed by Vinnie or any parallel dimensions by other Vinnie doing parallel podcasts in any alternate universes. Vinnie is a property of Vinnie LLC and was used with permission. Send your questions, comments, and death threats into contact@VinnieHardy.com. Until next time, this is Vinnie signing off.